So I have a question here.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to be more like the devil's advocate, and I may be hated for this.
Please, please.
If we were to talk about Article 35, this 35A, and we were to draw a parallel between 25 and 26 of the Constitution, and we talk about certain cultural and linguistic rights that have to be protected.
Correct.
And if we have to probably quote judgments like the Zoroastrian Society case, and if we were to have to quote examples like Himachal, where an outsider cannot own property, etc., and put all these instances together and say, cumulatively, this is what 35A is all about, and therefore it is justified because we are talking about certain intrinsic rights of certain intrinsically unique communities in the valley.
Good. Now I'm going to give an extremely politically incorrect answer. Something which will open the floodgates. Something that I have not spoken on so far at all, and I have steered clear of it entirely during the course of my discussion. One, even if you want to protect it, and like a stuck gramophone, or what is the word now? I'll be in a loop, which is, it still violates 368, point number one. If such a provision has to be included, I think the Parliament's consent must be taken, or it must effectively be the body that promulgates such an important change. That's point number one. Point number two, you don't have to go to Articles 25 and 26. You can simply go to Article 29, where the rights of cultural minorities are protected. That is something that you can fall back on. You take that argument for a moment. Okay. What is the consequence of that argument? You're going to ask, then what is the communal identity of Kashmir? Are you willing to go down that path? I'll start answering the question. I am ready to answer the question. Because the identity of Kashmir, effectively, while it is composite, it is the seat of Shaivite Hinduism. And you have also had the Sharada Peeth there, where somebody from Kerala, Shankaracharya, walked all the way to that particular place. And that place lies in ruins in POK at this particular point of time. Okay? There is a reason why Kashmiri Muslims have surnames like Bhatt, Dar. There's a reason for it, right? In fact, one of the special police officers who was assigned to Mirwais Farooq, what was his name? Pandit. He was a Muslim with the name Pandit. What is the meaning of this? Look, you decide to go down this path, there is a decent chance that you may have to end up reading Rahul Pandita's book, Our Moon Has Blood Clots, in terms of what has happened to that place over successive generations. Okay, that's a question that you have to ask yourself. Are we going to saddle the current generation with historical excesses is the question that you'll ask. I am not going to say that. But surely it can't be your argument that the identity of Kashmir resonates with the identity of Pakistan. That would be extremely unfair. Pakistan itself is an artificial entity carved out of certain regions, which cannot claim to be the homeland of anybody claiming allegiance with the green flag. I'm sorry. I believe in the concept that historically all these places should have been part of one India. If it comes across as an ideological position or a fascist position or a saffron position, I don't care. That is the position. Okay? Point number two. Point number two. This does not take away the promise of equality to all citizens, because that is not the civilizational impulse of this land. It is inherently democratic. It is inherently secular. The words, whether you choose Sarvadharma Sambhav or Dharma Nirpeksh, have existed in our lexicon way before somebody thought of secularism. And secularism as a concept has its origins in a Christian king being forced to choose between the Protestant denomination and the Catholic denomination, which is why it resulted in what we know as separation of the church from the state, because the question was, which church does the state stand by? Okay? So you have chosen to import those notions without understanding what are its origins. And have chosen to import the very same jurisprudence into India, which is why two words Ambedkar never wanted: secularism and socialism. Right? So you cannot have a discussion on this particular issue without opening a few points. I'm happy to discuss all of those points. But I'm going to take the cue that I'm not expected to turn this into a political debate. But if somebody wants to have an honest discussion on this, the honest discussion would be, are you really saying that 7624 has been the history of Kashmir? No, it has not been the history of Kashmir. I'll give you a different example. What is the difference? So, going by that logic, ma'am, Hyderabad should have gone with Pakistan. Largest princely state, Kashmir was the second largest princely state. Do you know how Hyderabad was populated? There's a beautiful book called The Last Nizam. You should read it. And that book effectively says how people from Yemen, Turkey, the Middle East were brought. Hyderabad was at one point of time the leading place for Islamic jurisprudence, even before Egypt, because the leading seminaries came from that particular place. So there is a Hyderabadi biryani, you've heard of it? What is the origin of the biryani? Have you ever bothered asking? The Arabs in Hyderabad are given a name called the Chosh. That is the name of that particular community. They brought the biryani along with them. And there was also the Persian flavor to it. Okay? The personal bodyguards of the Nizam were not Indian Muslims. They were not Muslims from Uttar Pradesh or Bihar or any place. They were Yemenis. When he chose to run and flee, he ran to Turkey. Okay? Because they have extensive ties. Because at that point of time, the Khalifa was from the Ottoman Empire, known as the Ottoman Empire, when anglicized. And therefore, every Muslim empire necessarily needed the stamp of approval of the Khalifa. No wonder Tipu Sultan wrote to the Khalifa asking for a stamp of approval over his domain. Of course, he's a freedom fighter is what we are told. That's a different issue. My point is this. This is a central discussion that must happen not just with respect to Kashmir, according to me. You want a permanent resolution of all communal issues in this country, have an honest discussion. But that honest discussion will immediately be impeded by the blasphemy law 295A and 153A, wherein you can't hurt religious sentiments. How do you hope to have the guts to discuss anything when law comes in your way and it says free speech except the truth? I don't know then what is free speech. So India needs, and I've said this ad nauseum, ad infinitum in multiple places, a commission for truth and reconciliation to ensure that this remains the rainbow that it is. It remains the thali that it remains that it is. It remains the orchestra that it remains that it is. However, this is a discussion that is fraught with serious allegations. The moment you make this point, they'll brand you, they'll label you, they'll gag you, they'll stifle you, they'll silence you. You can't have this discussion. Remember one thing. I discussed the entire issue without touching on this aspect, making my case entirely on law. Waiting for a question such as this. Thank you for the question. If they want to really talk about Kashmirian, then they have to open the whole thing. You can't have a discussion in silos. And I'm not saying the discussion must be had to say, look, your ancestor did this, therefore you're equally evil. You want to make that argument, which community can claim to have not done anything evil at all? That's not the argument. But these discussions, the moment you have these discussions, they will try and say, oh, he's pushing towards this, matlab ye to us direction se aata hai, his allegiance is not to the Indian flag, but to one color in that flag. Immediately they'll push you there. And you say something else, oh, his allegiance is to the other color. Okay. You cannot have these discussions unless and until the society is mature enough to handle the truth. So what is that statement from that movie? A few good men, you cannot handle the truth. That's what he says, no? Sorry? Jack Nicholson, that's the statement he makes, no? You can't handle the truth. And effectively, I think India must say that at least at this point of time, notwithstanding the rights of free speech which have been carved out in Natya Shastra way before anybody thought of it, we cannot handle the truth today. That is the fact.